رب نسألك برحماتك هذه أن تعجل برحمتك لنا، نسألك برحماتك هذه أن تعجل برحمتك لنا، نسألك برحماتك هذه أن تعجل برحمتك لنا، أن تعجل بإزهاق هذه الشدة، أن تعجل بالفرج.
سلام عليك يا رسول، سلام عليك يا حبيب، سلام عليك يا حبيب، سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك، طلع البدر علينا.
Libya was attacked and Syria is attacked today because they belong to the camp of resistance, resisting Zionist control of the world. That is a fairly simple and yet quite accurate statement. Surprise of all surprises for us who are Sunni Muslims. Iran is Shia. And we have said it again and again and again and again, that whoever declares of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that he was a usurper, that his khilafah was not legitimate, and then compounds that to declare that Uthman Ghani radiallahu, that Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper, and that Uthman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper. We say that you are profoundly misguided. And this is basic Shia doctrine, that these are all usurpers. And yet Shia Iran is not a Zionist client state and part of the resistance to Zionism, while so many in the Sunni world of Islam makes us ashamed of them. Why do the Zionists want to rule the world? It is Islamic eschatology which explains that fairly simple question. Ilmu akhirul zaman. The Zionists want to rule the world, and hence they attack Libya, and now they are attacking Syria. But the master target is of course Russia and then China. They want to rule the world so that they can deliver to Israel the status of ruling state in the world. And when Israel adopts that status of ruling state in the world, then a man will emerge in Israel, ruling over the state of Israel. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam described that man to us 1400 years ago. He is, of course, a Jew, a young man, powerfully built, curls what the Orthodox Jews have. And he will declare, I am Al-Masih, the Messiah. But he would not be the true Messiah. The true Messiah is Nabi Isa alayhi salam, the son of Maryam, the Virgin Mary. Rather, he would be Al-Masih al-Dajjal, Dajjal, the false Messiah. Dajjal meaning one who operates by deception. And the Zionists who work on behalf of Dajjal also operate by deception. The Zionists have multiple strategies for seeking to achieve rule over the whole world. And Islamic scholarship has homework to do, to understand these strategies and to be able to respond to them. There is an economic strategy which the banking system operates. The World Trade Organization is part of it. There is a monetary strategy in which the international monetary system, the International Monetary Fund, plays a significant role. The World Bank. There is a political strategy for achieving dominion over the world. And in that political strategy was the League of Nations and then the United Nations Organization. There is a military strategy in which NATO is now revealing itself as increasingly operating to eliminate all those who are resisting Dajjal or resisting Israel. At the heart of all of these strategies, economic, monetary, political, military, educational, etc., is deception. Deception is at the heart of it. We turn now to Zionism and the first Arab Spring. When the Zionists using deception, remember the Zionist movement was born about the same time that a certain person whose body was preserved for a long time was discovered. Whose body? Fir'aun. And Allah refers to it in Surah the preservation of the body. People all over the world listening, looking at this, Come on, Subang. Surah Yunus, وَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ. This day we're going to preserve your physical body, badan. لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً. That your physical body, when it is rediscovered, would be a sign for a people to come after you. What is the sign? I give my opinion, but you know the law. When Imran gives his opinion, you must not accept his opinion. No, unless and until you are convinced that it is correct. This is the respect I have for the intellect of the people who listen to me. Who are they who will come after? There will be a people who will live like Fir'aun lived, who will be arrogant, who will blaspheme against Allah, who will perpetrate oppression on the earth, and will wage war on Islam. And because they lived the way he lived, they'll die the way he died. Underneath the water, he declared his faith when death was staring him. And when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns, these will also declare their faith. وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. Says Allah. None of them will escape. They'll all have to declare their faith in him at that time when he returns. But it won't be of any benefit for them. They live the way he lived, they'll die the way he died and enter into the hellfire. So the Zionist movement was created about the same time when the body of Fir'aun was discovered. And then the second major event that occurred after that was the First World War. And we Muslims have not as yet done a sufficient critical study and analysis of the First World War, the events which led up to it. The first Arab Spring was part of it. When the Zionists in Britain and in France succeeded in getting Muslims, Arab, Indian, Punjabi, etc., to fight with them against the Ottoman Empire so that they could succeed in their aim in that first Arab Spring. In regime change, for example, in many parts of the Arab world, and in liberating, quote-unquote, Jerusalem for the Jews. It was only afterwards that these Arabs realized that they were taken for a ride, because they were deceived. They were offered freedom and independence from Turkish rule, and they were told you could have your Arab Khilafah can be restored, etc. But they were deceived. And now has come the second Arab Spring. And the same thing is happening once again. That they are getting Muslims to fight for them. Arab Muslims are waging war on behalf of the Zionists, supporting the Zionists, fighting on behalf of the State of Israel, and yet convinced in their hearts that they're waging a jihad. And so history is repeating itself with the second Arab Spring. Is this a valid jihad? I recognize that there are so many amongst them in Syria today who genuinely and sincerely believe that they are fighting a legitimate jihad. And I have a duty to such people, to explain to them and to do it in a nice way, that no, you're wrong, you're misguided. Hopefully that they will listen to these words. And I'm not the only one who is speaking to them. The Imam of Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, Sheikh Salahuddin al-Arafa, I think is his name, is speaking eloquently and forcefully on the subject, in combating what is coming from Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi. If you see with only one eye, then you will be convinced, you will swallow the lie that this is a legitimate jihad. But if you see with two eyes, and you're able to penetrate the reality of things, you'll recognize that no, it is not permissible to take $1 million. $1 million, that's what they're offering you, eh? $1 million to go fight in Syria? Is that the way we fight in jihad? Or do we rather say, give me a horse, and give me a sword, and take care of my wife and my children? You don't have to pay me $1 million to go and fight the jihad. If you pay me $1 million, that's not a jihad, that's a Yankee jihad. And you're listening to me in Syria, and you know that what I'm speaking is the truth. A young woman wrote to me from Tunisia and said to me, my brother received $1 million Tunisian dinars to go and fight in Syria. And as he was leaving, the police caught him and brought him back to my father and handed him over. And handed over the 1 million Tunisian dinars, which is worth about 600 or 700 USD. 600,000 or 700,000 American dollars. You can buy a couple houses in Subangaya with that. And my father took the money and locked him up in the room. And now he does not want to speak to any of us. I hope that young man will listen to my words. Surely he has this much common sense to know that you don't buy people. We're not up for sale. Not those who fight in the way of Allah in jihad. You can't buy us with $5. You can't buy us with $500. You can't buy us with $5 million because we are not up for sale. Say that to the paymasters who are spending millions and millions of dollars to buy, not mujahideen, they're buying mercenaries to go and fight in Syria. So the young man is now locked up in a room. He doesn't want to talk to anybody, he's only reciting the Quran all the time. And the family contacted me. What can we do, Sheikh? You can't keep him locked up forever. If he insists that he wants to go in Syria and fight, and you explain to him that this is wrong, this is misguided, this is not a jihad, you can't keep him away. Let him go. But when he leaves, he will not return. You will not have any links with him after that. He's no longer a member of your family. Saudi Arabia, Libya, Qatar, Turkey are all in the Zionist camp. Is it so difficult for you to understand that? I hope you're listening to me in Syria. Saudi Arabia, Libya, now under Zionist rule, Qatar, Turkey are all in the Zionist camp. Turkey is a member state of NATO. And these are the countries who are financing, and these are the countries who are supplying the weapons to you to go and fight. Is this a legitimate jihad, or is this a Zionist attack on Syria? Why is it so difficult for you to understand? You declare of those who oppose you and who are supporting the government of Syria in its opposition to the insurrectionists, that these are wajibul qatl, that it is legitimate for you to kill them. And you go to Syria and you kill these people. The price that you will pay for killing people for no just cause is the fire of Jahannam. If you die in the struggle, you are not shaheed. No. You go into the hellfire. And those who you kill, they are the ones who will be shuhada. And so we say, if you see with two eyes, you will recognize that this is a misguided effort. Libya, under the new regime, is sending weapons, and it is likely that high-tech weapons, which the Libyan army used to have, would find their way into Syria. NATO will say, we didn't send it, it came from Libya. As these high-tech weapons come into your hands and you start using them, there will be an escalation of the conflict in Syria. High-tech weapons are also going to come from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which seem to be hell-bent, doing everything they can possibly do to bring down the regime in Syria and make Syria another Libya. Perhaps this is the fulfillment, one more time, of the prophecy of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and I hope you're listening to me in Syria, because you know very well that Saudi Arabia is financing and Saudi Arabia is sending weapons. And Saudi Arabia is ruled by people who came from Najd. Saudi Arabia has Hijaz and has Najd. Hijaz is to the west and Najd is to the east. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is in Medina. And he says, Allahumma barik lana fi Shamina wa Yamanina. Oh Allah, put blessings for us in our Sham and our Yemen. And they asked, what about Najd? 3 times. And he said, from Najd, pointing in the direction of Najd, he said, from there would be the horns of shaitan, qarn of shaitan, and tribulations. And the rulers of Saudi Arabia today, the Saudi Wahhabi rulers of Saudi Arabia, are Najdi. He pointed to the east and he said, from there will come qarn of shaitan, the horns of Satan. And so I ask of you, who say that you are waging a legitimate jihad in Syria today, can the horns of Satan be part of a legitimate jihad? Have you got no sense? Saudi Arabia is in this struggle up to its neck, the insurrection in Syria, and therefore the qarn of shaitan is involved in it. Qatar has suddenly risen up as a Zionist state. It is hosting Al Jazeera and the evidence mounts every day that Al Jazeera is a sister of CNN. Every time there is an Arab Spring, an insurrection or a rebellion or something, Al Jazeera is there to add fuel to the fire, to try to ensure that the struggle is successful and the Zionists achieve their objective. So the dust is no longer there in our eyes, and we can see plainly what Al Jazeera is, a Zionist front organization. Qatar was chosen, little Qatar, which yesterday was only taking care of sheep and goats and diving in the sea for pearls, is now hosting the 2022 World Cup. That could not have occurred without Zionist support, unless you are blind and you are taking money and you are taking weapons from Qatar, and you want to tell me this is a legitimate jihad? Turkey is a member of NATO, and Turkey as a NATO member supported the insurrection, the armed insurrection in Libya to overthrow the Gaddafi regime. And when they succeeded, the British Prime Minister and the French Prime Minister were the first to fly into Tripoli to congratulate the Zionist success in Libya. And guess who followed them? It was the Turkish Prime Minister, to his eternal shame. To his eternal shame. He flew to Tripoli to congratulate them on their struggle, which had succeeded. And so now NATO is in control of Libya. And this is the same Turkish government which is now sending arms and sending weapons and sending men and financing on behalf of NATO, and therefore on behalf of the Zionists, the insurrection in Syria.
كم واحد انتو؟ بس 2؟ اعطوني عهد. بطلي بس ها؟ لقنا يا فاضي. حطوا ايدكم قدامكم. حط على الباب قدام. هيك.
الله أكبر كتيبة أبو القاسم.
Since 1980, in the 1980s, Turkey established a military alliance with Israel. And that military alliance for military cooperation has continued from that day to this day. And Zionists around the world support Turkey and will not allow criticisms of Turkey because they consider Turkey to be an ally of the state of Israel. But then came the flotilla to Gaza and a high-profile attempt to break the blockade of Gaza 3 years ago. Malaysia was also involved in that. And the Israeli armed forces responded with a brutal attack in which 7 Turkish nationals were killed. The Turkish government then scaled down their diplomatic relations with Israel 3 years ago, demanded an apology and demanded compensation for the families of those who were killed, and demanded legal action against the soldiers, the men in the Israeli armed forces who did the work of killing. 3 years have passed, and now suddenly Obama goes to Jerusalem, sits down with Netanyahu, cook whatever pilau they cooked, or maybe biryani. And the next thing we hear is that Netanyahu telephones the Turkish Prime Minister and offers a rare apology. Israel never apologizes, no. A rare apology, and offers to pay compensation. And the Turkish Prime Minister graciously decides to drop the cases against the Israeli armed forces, the legal cases. And so they've restored diplomatic relations at a high level. And the friendship between Turkey and Israel is now restored. And your jihad, your so-called jihad in Syria, is being supported up to its neck by Turkey, which is in friendly relations with Israel, and which has a military alliance with Israel, and which is a member state of NATO. And you cannot recognize that this is a bogus jihad? What more do I need to tell you? Why did Netanyahu call and apologize? Give me a little time and we'll explain that. Turkey also is the inheritor of the Ottoman Empire. And while Turkish Muslims don't like to hear it, it is the truth. The Ottoman Empire acted unjustly in oppressing Eastern Orthodox Christians in Greece, in Bulgaria, in Romania, in Ukraine, waging war after war against them unjustly, enslaving their people, enslaving the women who then became part of the Ottoman harem. The unjust wars against the people of Eastern Christianity, which the Quran refers to as Rome, continued for 500 years, as a consequence of which Greece now hates Islam. The Greek people have hatred in their hearts for Islam. The Bulgarians have hatred in their hearts for Islam. The Russians have hatred in their hearts for Islam. The Ottomans added salt to the wounds when they conquered the capital city of Rome, of Eastern Christian Orthodox, Constantinople. And when they conquered Constantinople, they said, this is a fulfillment of the prophecy of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةِ. You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. No, you're wrong. That prophecy is still to be fulfilled. And I'm planning to write a little book on that, inshallah. The same way that the Ottomans oppressed the people of Eastern Europe, the Christians of Eastern Europe, and did it on behalf of the Zionists, not knowing it, so too has Turkey consistently oppressed the Kurdish people from day one. You cannot consistently oppress a people and not expect them to respond. If they have responded with terrorism, you started it. You are the cause of it. And this oppression of the Kurdish people by Turkey invalidates any claim of the Kurdish people, of the Turkish people, to be able to sponsor a legitimate jihad. Finally, I don't know whether you know of it, those of you who are there in Syria, waging the so-called jihad. Are you aware who is your ally who is also fighting with you? It's not just Libya and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey. You have another friend who is fighting with you against the same regime. That friend sent the aircraft to bomb Syria. I'm talking about Israel. Are you happy to be in the Israeli camp? To have Israel as your ally in this so-called jihad? Israel attacked Syria. It must have been about a month or 2 months ago. The methodology of your struggle is also wrong, with acts of terrorism and killing people because you say they are wajibul qatl, killing them in a masjid, a sheikh who is delivering a sermon, and this invalidates your claim to be a valid jihad. The Zionists want to break the resistance front. That's why they attack Libya and now Syria and then Iran. The Zionists want to break the resistance front and replace it with what? Not pro-Zionist regimes. What they want in Syria is an Islamic government. They want an Islamic government which will claim that they're restoring the Khilafah in Syria. And that this Islamic government will declare we're waging jihad against Israel. That we're going to liberate the Holy Land. And as you get a string of Islamic governments and the rhetoric begins to rise all around Israel. I made this analysis about 12 years ago in a lecture in Sydney. A domino effect. They'll fall one by one and Islamic governments will emerge. Why did Israel smile when Ikhwan al-Muslimun takes over in Egypt? Why does Israel smile when you now have a so-called Islamic government in Libya? Israel is smiling because Israel will tomorrow be able to claim with some justification that Islam is rising now from its slumber, and Islam poses the greatest of all threats to the state of Israel. The Muslims are going to wipe us off the map, and if we don't do something, we'll be finished. And so Israel is creating what is called casus bellum, a justification for waging the great wars that Israel has already planned to wage. In order for Israel to rule the world, Israel must rule the Arabs. In order for Israel to rule the Arabs, she needs not only to enslave them economically and monetarily, but also military occupation. Israel has to wage big wars. And Israel does not want to wage her big wars while yet appearing to be an aggressor. And so the Arab Spring is meant to produce a strategic environment of Islamic governments all around Israel that will justify an Israel war, a great war of Israel launched against the Arabs. We now come to the most important part of our talk tonight, and that is that they have now tried everything they could try for 2 years, and the Syrian regime has not fallen. No. The reason why the Syrian regime has not fallen and the Libyan regime fell is because NATO cannot attack with no fly and so on, because Russia has blocked it, and China has blocked it in the Security Council. Why did Russia and China vote in favor on Libya? It's a mysterious question. I have an answer, but I don't know whether I'm right or wrong. Very mysterious. But on on Syria, Putin has put his foot down, and they're not budging. And so NATO cannot intervene militarily. And that is why the Syrian regime has survived. So what do you do after 2 years? I hope I'm wrong, because if I'm right, we're in plenty of trouble. I believe that they have now decided the time has come for Turkey to attack Syria. Of course, there will have to be some false flag terrorism as usual to justify the attack. Maybe a chemical attack. And they say, well, Syria's chemical weapons are now out of control of the Syrian government. Or some other kind of a false flag act of terrorism, which will justify a Turkish attack on Syria. As soon as Turkey attacks Syria, it will not be long, I believe, before Russia will intervene. And if Russia intervenes, then there have been those who've been writing to me for 2 years now and saying to me, Sheikh, Jerusalem and the Quran told us that when Dajjal was in a day which was like a year, during that time, not the total amount of time, no, during that time Britain emerged as a ruling state and the world experienced Pax Britannica. And we agree with you, Sheikh. And then came Dajjal's day like a month. That's the hadith, Sahih Muslim. And during that time, the United States emerged as the second ruling state in the world, and the world experienced Pax Americana. But it's not Pax, it's war. And they've been saying to me, Sheikh, a day like a month has ended, and a day like a week has already begun, and Israel is already ruling the world. And I have refrained so far from making such a statement. But I have to say that if Turkey attacks Syria, then Israel is going to come out from behind hijab. And Israel is going to participate full-fledged in the war. Russia is going to enter. Then I'll have to concede that a day which is like a week has now commenced. How long it's going to last, I don't know. When a day which is like a week has ended, only then will Dajjal appear in our world of space and time, and you see him as a human being.
Si vous voyez un jeune homme de 22 ans faire les poubelles à Montpellier, il ne s'agit pas forcément d'un SDF. En fait, Jérémy Briffa est étudiant et il est sûrement le premier représentant en France d'un mouvement qui nous vient des États-Unis. Il s'agit de ne consommer que des produits trouvés dans les poubelles pour faire des économies et pour lutter contre la société de consommation et le gaspillage. Il est ce qu'on appelle un déchétarien. Portrait signé Véronique Guéglione, Françoise Mazou.
Donc ça c'est de la viande, ça je vais récupérer.
Il connaît les horaires des éboueurs par cœur, et il sait que dans la poubelle d'une supérette, on peut trouver de tout, y compris du bœuf bourguignon, même pas périmé. Et ça, il n'a pas peur d'en manger.
Hop, là on a des œufs. Bien souvent, il y a un œuf qui est cassé dans le pack. Voilà, celui-ci. Regardez, les autres sont bons. Ça va faire depuis le début que j'ai rien chopé du tout, et donc je vais continuer. Même, je pense, même si je suis malade... Je suis malade aussi sans manger dans les poubelles, donc il n'y a pas de raison.
Ça fait un mois qu'il pioche dans les poubelles et il ne peut plus s'en empêcher. Jérémy Briffa aurait les moyens d'acheter à manger. Il n'est pas SDF, c'est juste un étudiant révolté par tout ce gâchis.
Des salades.
Direction la Chine, l'Inde ou le Brésil, 3 des plus gros producteurs de tabac au monde. C'est là que commence le cycle de vie d'une cigarette. 7 milliards de tonnes de tabac sont cultivées chaque année sur la planète. Une fois récoltée, la plante est séchée, souvent avec les moyens du bord. Des arbres sont coupés, puis brûlés en très grande quantité. On estime qu'il faut 1 hectare de bois pour sécher 1 hectare de tabac. On trouve plus de 2500 composants chimiques dans une cigarette avant sa combustion. Il s'agit de parfums et d'additifs pour l'essentiel. Tous ces composants parcourent des milliers de kilomètres avant d'atterrir en Europe ou aux États-Unis. Après la fabrication, l'emballage. Lui non plus ne fait pas dans la légèreté. Pour un paquet de cigarettes, un film de plastique ou d'aluminium, un emballage carton et un film cellophane sont nécessaires. Le produit est maintenant prêt à la vente. En se consumant, une cigarette dégage plus de 4000 substances dans l'atmosphère. Et il faudra patienter plus de 12 ans avant que ce mégot ne disparaisse complètement de la nature.
Après s'être emparé de la presque totalité de la péninsule d'Arabie avec l'aide des guerriers islamiques wahhabis, Ibn Saoud établit le royaume de l'Arabie Saoudite.
Les wahhabis étaient farouchement anti-occidentaux. Ils veulent revenir en arrière à un islam pur qui ne subissait pas les menaces de l'Occident.
C'est par hasard qu'on a découvert le pétrole. On cherchait de l'eau. Malgré les critiques concernant une présence étrangère dans le royaume, le roi permet à la production commerciale du pétrole de commencer.
Il en résulte la première union entre l'Arabie Saoudite et les États-Unis.
Pour loger la main-d'œuvre, les premiers complexes domiciliaires américains sont créés.
Les lois islamiques très strictes en vigueur à l'extérieur de ces murs ne s'appliquent pas à l'intérieur.
L'Occident et l'Orient se rencontrent en Égypte alors que le président Roosevelt et Ibn Saoud, roi d'Arabie,
ils veulent que l'Amérique soit présente ici, dans leur royaume, parce que nous représentons leur sécurité. Les membres de l'élite saoudienne devinrent des dépensiers notoires et perdirent crédibilité et respect chez les traditionnalistes religieux.
En réponse à l'appui des États-Unis pour Israël dans la guerre israélo-arabe, les musulmans wahhabis pressent la monarchie saoudienne d'arrêter le pompage du pétrole.
Ceux qui contrôlent l'approvisionnement en pétrole tiennent le monde occidental en otage.
Les prix quadruplent.
Le pétrole était une priorité pour la sécurité nationale américaine.